love is something, the moment you hear the word love, it creates an instant, kind of a spark, and you're excited to read something, anything about love. That's why I think after such a long time also, all those kinds of classic romances and love stories and novels centered around love stories are wildly popular across the world, and people, irrespective of their location, what age group they belong to, are fond of love stories. But in non-fiction, I haven't really come across so many books in the non-fiction genre which are talking about love, and which claim to explain to you how to find love. So the book which I'm going to talk about today, the book which I'm going to review today, claims to do that only. It claims to tell you how to find love and how to keep love, not in the Bollywood sense of finding romantic love, but in the realistic sense of finding sort of in the realistic sense of keeping and nurturing relationships in real life. I'm talking about 8 Rules of Love by Shetty. 8 Rules of Love, how to find it, keep it, and let it go. It's a book by Shetty, and today I'm going to review this book for you guys. Now, I'll give you an honest review, and if you ask about my personal opinion, how much I like this book and how much I did not like this book, it's kind of 50-50. I liked some things about this book, some things about this book I did not like, so I'm going to give you my own honest review. Of course, what I think about this book is, by no matter a universal definition. Some of you might just fall in love with this book, but this is just my personal opinion that I'm going to share with you guys. Now let's check out the cover of the book. The cover of the book is very enticing, it's very inviting, and trust me, the moment I saw the cover of the book on Amazon and when I read about the reviews of the book, it's a widely promoted book, and I think one of the best sellers as well. So the bar of the expectations goes really high, when you read about this book, and it's been endorsed by so many celebrities: Deepika Padukone, Jennifer Lopez, even the American spirituality guru Deepak Chopra has given an endorsement for this book. So the expectations start to run really high, and you're really excited to read this book. To be honest, when I started reading this book, and a couple of pages down the line, a bit less than halfway through, I did find the book interesting, but then after going through this book halfway through, I started finding it a bit boring and started noticing a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of flaws, and according to me, it really did not live up to my expectations. Now I'll be giving an honest review, talking about both my positive and negative impressions, and I'm going to first say something about positive about the book and then contrast it with what I found negative about the book. Not necessarily negative, but my criticism of the book. The interesting thing about this book, the most interesting thing about 8 Rules of Love by Shetty is the format of the book itself and certain ideas that the author is trying to throw in. So the book is basically structured into 4 parts, and these 4 parts are apparently based on the 4 ashrams, the 4 kind of stages of Indian philosophy, or Hindu philosophy to be precise. In Hindu philosophy, there are these 4 stages which a human being is supposed to go through in life. First is the Brahmacharya stage, and second is the Grihasth stage. Then third is the Vanaprasth, and the final stage is, the ashram stage, or which is the basically the meditation stage. So roughly these 4 stages mean that, in the Brahmacharya stage, you're basically a student. So your focus is on self-learning, self-development. You're kind of detached from the world. You're detached from, all the worldly desires and all kinds of sensations. Your focus could be on your studies or on your professional goals. You're basically very focused on yourself and self-development. The second stage is the Grihasth stage. In the Grihasth stage, you typically get married, have a family, and your focus is on nurturing a family, nurturing relationships, basically living the worldly life. So both personal and professional sphere, kind of balancing the personal and professional sphere. In the Vanaprasth ashram, you start getting detached, from your worldly desires and moving towards, you start moving towards the kind of, meditation and non-worldly attainments. It's a kind of transition stage. Now the final and the fourth stage is, where you actually go and retire. You take retirement from the from your worldly duties. And in olden days it was actually equivalent of, it literally meant that you take leave of your family and you go and live at an ashram, or you go into the forests. Basically you're living a detached life. So this is the final stage. So the book is structured, it kind of tries to relate these concepts of love, or these ideas about love, to these four stages, which is, I think, it's a very interesting component. For me, it's the most interesting component of this book, because that's what makes it different from the run-of-the-mill stuff written on love and relationships. So it tries to apply those concepts of, like I said, these four stages of life in Hindu philosophy, and also various other concepts, from traditional Indian philosophy, like the concept of sanskar, or the idea of love in bhakti tradition. So there are these there are these exciting ideas the book tries to work with. But then the same thing also becomes a bit of an obstruction for the book, in the sense that the author is taking up these ideas, but somehow it seems, that these ideas are being used as clickbaits, and later on then these ideas are being systematically abandoned. So when he starts talking about the brahmacharya ashram, and starts establishing those ideas in the context of the idea of the life of a brahmachari, the author is not following the premise through. He's starting with that idea, but then gradually it's going all over the place. Personal development, how to do this, how to do that, and how to write a love letter to yourself. So I think these ideas are taken up, but then the author is not able to follow up these ideas till the end of the chapter. So it seems like these are just for the sake of getting attention, and these ideas from the Indian philosophy have been just taken as clickbait. So that's my primary criticism of this book. I think the author throws a lot of stuff about Indian philosophy and this and that, and he claims to divide the book according to these four sections, the four stages of our life according to Hindu philosophy. But I think the book doesn't live up to those expectations, and the author kind of goes into all directions, and he quotes from different sources. So for me it becomes like a very hodgepodge kind of a thing. The second thing which I liked about this book is the fact that it completely it completely warns the reader, I would say, against those Bollywood kind of notions of romantic love. So this is not one of those feel-good books which is trying to push down that narrative of romantic love down your throat. Rather, it's giving you a very realistic picture of love, and many initial chapters in fact warn you against those notions of romantic love, those kind of teenage love fantasies that we get from Bollywood, or other different kinds of cinema, and that's how we imagine love to be. So this is something I really liked about the book, that it's actually giving you a very realistic scenario of a real life relationship, and how a real life relationship works, far away from the maddening world of Bollywood romances. Now this can be a weakness of the book as well, because I think for some readers, especially when this is kind of like, I don't know, this is something, if you're a hopeless romantic, then when you read a book about love, you expect it to have some kind of sublime and romantic notions about love. So in that sense, for some readers it can be a letdown, and you might find this book a bit too practical and dry, because it's just basically trying to dissect love like a business lesson or something. So I found that charm missing in the book. When you're talking about love, even if you're giving practical ideas, there has to be certain charm in your writing style. So for me, that charm is missing, which I thought was a bit of a drawback. The third thing which I liked about this book is the fact that it's actually giving you a lot of practical real life examples of relationships, and giving you solid advice, a lot of exercises. It's also giving you, self exercises which you can do yourself to explore, yourself, or exercises which you can accomplish along with your partner to enable better understanding of each other and to enable, better compatibility, better commitment in your relationships. And a lot of this stuff is very practical and interesting. You get to hear stories of relationships of other people, and the writer also quotes quite generously from his own life and his relationship with his wife. So all this stuff is pretty realistic and interesting. This is something I liked about the book. Now, what I disliked about the book is, in the same vein, is the fact that it's just, way too much of information, and it can get a bit too overwhelming for you at times. A lot of it is repetitive and redundant, and a lot of stuff is, like I said, it's very redundant and it's very obvious also, things like you need to find a balance with your partner, and you need to, sort of find a common ground, and you need to love yourself before you start loving other people. So a lot of this stuff is, very usual stuff which we all know about, and, it's not something that the author is telling. So a lot of stuff, I found was very repetitive and redundant, and according to me, the book would have been much better if it would have been, summarized and kind of tightly edited. It's like a 300 plus pages book, and to me, that seems to be, it seems to be, quite a long book for this kind of subject matter. I would have preferred something, I would have preferred like really tight editing, so that the book, could have been probably 100 pages or 150 pages, but no more than that. I really think, that this book would have worked really well had it been like, limited to 100 pages or 150 pages. According to me, there's a lot of repetition, which can be very distracting for a reader. Like I said, that a lot of advice here is practical and fruitful. But the fact that it's so repetitive, and it's also written like a textbook, you don't feel like you're reading some kind of a book about love. You feel like, the way those exercises have been written, and there's so much of gyan, you feel like you're reading a psychology or a sociology textbook. So, when I'm reading a non-fiction book for general interest, I really do not want to concentrate on it like a textbook. That's the mindset of a general reader. So that's what I think. I think that this book needed a lot of tight editing, and then it would have perhaps worked a bit better for the reader. Although the book does give you some unconventional insight also, some facets of relationships, some dynamics of relationships which we usually don't notice or tend to overlook. For example, there's a whole chapter on fighting here, the way couples quarrel or the way couples fight, and I really like this chapter. So this chapter tells you, how conflict is very important for the nurturing of a relationship, because of lack of conflict in a couple simply means, that they're not trying to engage with each other at a deep level. So if you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, or if you have a partner, with whom you apparently have no conflict and it's always peaceful, then that means, that there's no love, there's no passion, and, everything is on the surface level. Because obviously when you try to engage with somebody at a realistic level, try to share your dreams, aspirations, there are bound to be some kind of conflicts and some kind of battlegrounds. So to develop your relationship further and to really connect with each other as a couple, you need to have those fights and disagreements as well. So like this, there are some ideas which the book throws at you, which are very interesting, and a lot of unconventional stuff, like I said, about relationships, which we do not normally notice, which we normally overlook. And the best part about this book is I found that the advice which is given here, of course, it can be applied, it's specifically meant for romantic relationships, but I think outside the purview of romantic relationships also, a lot of this stuff, a lot of this advice is applicable, whether somebody is your close friend or confidant. So this advice is basically, it's not exclusively reserved to romantic relationships. It can even be applied to your family, parents, friends, everybody. So that ways, I think the book takes the definition of love in a very dynamic manner, and it's not necessarily romantic love the book is talking about. The book begins on the note of self-love, that how you need to figure out yourself, your priorities, and nurture yourself before you actually begin to know the other person, before you begin to develop your relationship, seek out a relationship with the other person. This I find especially is a very useful idea, because the concept of love, as we generally know, and that's the major, I think the major point of conflict in most relationships, is because people somewhere lose themselves down the line, as they get overwhelmed with trying to adjust to a new person. It's literally a kind of a nuclear fusion of identities happening, which is something which you won't be able to handle if your own sense of self is not strong, if your own sense of self is weak. So somewhere you need to maintain a balance. So my overall verdict, I think the book takes a pretty nuanced take on relationships, and like I said, people who are struggling in relationships, I think will probably find it quite useful, because it offers a lot of practical advice. But as a book, I have a slightly, the 50-50% thing, that I like the book 50% and dislike it 50%. The 50% dislike part is mostly because, how it's been written, and the fact that it's too long. And like I said in the beginning, also the Indian philosophy connections are not coming through very well. I think that could have been worked out in a better way. So I definitely think 8 Rules of Love by Shetty is a pretty good one-time read, and I would pass on the link. You could buy the book on Amazon. I would include the link in the description section. So that's it for guys today. Thank you so much for listening. If you like the content, please do press the like button, and please do subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.